We have one life, and one life only. A woman gave birth to you. The ovum that made you formed in your mother's body while she was growing in your grandmother's body. Every egg your mother released as an adult was already in her body when she was a baby. Your father had to wait a little longer, but as he progressed toward adulthood, he made up for lost time with 250 million sperm in every ejaculation, most of which probably ended up in a sock. Yet somehow, in love or madness or hate, a single sperm found its way from your father to a single egg in your mother, and miraculously, you survived. There's little point in arguing about the origins or the existence of COVID. People infinitely smarter than us are interrogating that right now. But let's not forget that two or more things can be true at once. It is possible that the virus is a real danger to a small number of people, while it can also be true that this virus is being exploited by an equally small number of people in ways that are profoundly damaging to vast numbers of the rest of us. Anybody who questions that narrative is called crazy, yet many mad people around the world who were protesting in over 180 countries predicted precisely how this was going to unfold, and nobody listened. An unprecedented propaganda machine is telling us every day what to see, think, and feel. Reality is distorted by a relentless diet of doubt and fear, washed down by a double dose of paranoia. It's everywhere. But how much of this is our responsibility? Governments didn't force us to stop questioning the absurd narrative we find ourselves in. Big Pharma didn't force us to stop visiting vulnerable loved ones. Big tech billionaire businessmen didn't force us to pass obscene discrimination laws to facilitate this neatly orchestrated division between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. That's on us. Too busy attacking each other on Twitter, posting our vaccine certs on social media, and demonizing any and all dissent, we don't want to admit that we really haven't a clue what the hell is happening. We wake up and start each new normal day in the docile hope that this is all going to pass so we can return to the old abnormal of jumping back on Twitter to attack somebody else we hope we will never meet in reality. For the shareholders of the pharmaceutical industry, the dream has always been to have humankind hooked on their product from the cradle to the grave. Voltaire said, "Whoever can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." A heavily funded mass marketing campaign changed the Irish Constitution by bringing out the feel-good factor of abortion. Your opinion on termination is your own. That's not the issue here. When genuinely good people are manipulated into celebrating the removal of life as something cuddly and fashionable and cool, their exploited empathy will make it possible to convince them of anything. Once we dehumanize another, we can do whatever we wish to them. So when democracy can be used to remove the right to life before birth, how much easier do you think it will be for us to embrace the comparatively tamer idea of removing all other rights post-life? For our own good, of course. That's what they keep telling us. All of this is for our own good. The odds of you being here is a quintillion to 1. That's a 1 and 8 zeros, a million, greater than the number of the entire population of the world since the beginning of time. From the cradle to the grave, those are the impossible odds of you being here. When you have a child, your one life expands into the soul of another. Even when they hate you, your soul is theirs and you hold theirs in you. For life, and if you believe in such things, perhaps for the afterlife. No doubt that's a difficult concept for people who have never had children to comprehend, and this is not to diminish anybody who has not had children. There are too many divisions already without adding another. Male versus female, black versus white, gay versus straight, trans rights versus women's rights, the left versus the right, binary versus non-binary, babies' rights versus, well, we already took care of that, didn't we? But isn't it interesting how so many of the defiant protectors of bodily autonomy, who wailed in triumphant celebration in Dublin Castle at the right to control their bodies, are now silent in the face of mass vaccinations? Does the whole bodily autonomy thing only come into play when it's the born versus the unborn? There are good people out there who genuinely believe what is needed is a global mandatory vaccination program. And despite the apparent evidence to the contrary, some politicians are good people who genuinely care about children. Yet so many of those politicians making decisions about the future have no children. They have never been a parent. They've never witnessed the stumbling beauty of their child's first tentative step, their first smile, the first laugh, the first fart. They have never heard the piercing sound of their child screaming at 4 a.m. Never seen the fear in an infant who can't communicate what is wrong because they have not yet developed the language skills to explain pain. Never rushed into the children's hospital, carrying their semi-conscious child in their arms only to be met by a wall of administration, beside overcrowded waiting rooms filled with terrified children and panicked parents, waiting for a bed in an out-of-date ward, barely held together by brave and beautiful and exploited staff. If these politicians care so much about our vulnerable citizens, why did they shift elderly people out of hospitals into care homes where they could no longer get the medical attention they needed? Why did they force many of our elderly citizens to die horrific deaths while our newly vacated hospitals lay empty? From the cradle to the grave, why didn't they fix decades of rot in the children's hospital generated by their party's policies? Why didn't they help our homeless children? Or bring real equality into the education system? Why did they empower banks to evict countless families from their homes? Or why did they send women back to cold and damp shelters right after they have given birth? Or why do they pay GPs 5 times more to facilitate an abortion than they do to facilitate a birth? And why do they think we are dumb enough to believe that they have the best interests of our children at heart when they have proven in every precedent that these politicians don't give a damn? The Irish government has just announced that it has teamed up with the huge tech firm behind the largest dating company on the globe to launch a segregation addition to their apps. A touchy-feely kind of sexy discrimination where lucky candidates with the correct vaccination status will have a free super like conferred upon them. Now, I don't know what a super like is, but it sounds special. Makes a body want to sign up. Besides, it's not the function of a dating app to cure loneliness. Every shareholder on that multi-billion-dollar monster ride knows that the real function is to increase the numbers of the lonely. Being hooked on the drugs of the pharmaceutical industry perfectly feeds into being hooked on the highs of the big tech loneliness industry. 2 vampires feeding on our collective humanity for unlimited profit, facilitated by a government with a proven penchant for exploiting human vulnerability. Voltaire was right. Whoever can make you believe absurdities can indeed make you commit atrocities. When something so sublime as human intimacy is hijacked by mercenary pimps, we are all turned into unpaid whores. When something so powerful as democracy is corrupted by spineless politicians, corporate tech manipulators, and pharmaceutical companies, we are turned into a broken nation. When something unprecedented in the history of humankind, like a global mandatory vaccination program, is embraced without question, we are finally turned into willing eunuchs in their filthy whorehouse. Am I vaccinated? Yes, I am. Both shots. Are my children vaccinated? Yes, they are. Both shots. Or am I lying? Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Maybe my medical history is none of your damn business. Now, if you have an issue with that, then I will do everything to accommodate you. I won't judge you. In fact, when it comes to bars and restaurants, if we follow the science, does it not make more sense for you to be seated on the outside, in the wide open fresh air, where viral contagion is at a minimum, while the rest of us ignorant, undeclared fools with the 99% survival rate sit inside and raise a glass to your health through the window as we watch the rain wash away all your fears? For your own good, of course. I'll even send you out a drink and a meal. Just don't forget to tip your waiter. Where did this barely elected government get balls big enough to think they could pass laws telling you or me or any citizens of these broken but beautiful cities and towns and villages where we can and cannot go? They got it from us. We beseech them to take power. We do it to ourselves. There will always be rage out there. No doubt there are a few folks watching this right now choking on their contempt, hating the protests happening around the world in those 180 countries. But when this pandemic was declared, it was the protesters who insisted this was also a ruse for something darker. Nobody listened. Protesters were called mad. When governments asked us to trust there would be only one lockdown to flatten the curve, the protesters said it was the beginning of multiple lockdowns. Nobody listened. They were called crazy. When protesters insisted this was about a global mandatory vaccination program, nobody listened. When they said vaccine passports were next, nobody listened. When they said the pharmaceutical industry aided by big tech, facilitated by our government, was coming for our kids, nobody listened. We're still not listening. Our children teach us that nothing kills the human spirit faster than fear. And history teaches us that the greatest act of defiance is often to refuse to live in fear. When bizarre facts begin to align with absurd conspiracy, we have two choices. You can double down, or you can face the unthinkable. You can remain silent, or you can fight for your voice. You can remain on your knees, begging for scraps of truth from pathological liars and power. Or, like your tentative child, learning to walk. You can use whatever is left of your one miraculous life to stand up and take that first step into hope.